Welcome to the deep dive, where your curiosity guides us. You send us the sources, and we dig in to find the key insights, the surprising bits, the things that make you go, aha.
That's right.
And today, one of you sent us something, well, truly fascinating. It's a YouTube video, and it claims nothing less than the death of Pope Francis.
It's quite a claim. We've been looking at the transcript from a video called, and it's a bit of a mouthful, 127 FRP, C 280 degrees, P 2 degrees, Pay Francois est mort, followed by some other details, from the FR Colgero-Grafassi Investigations Francais channel.
Yeah, the title doesn't exactly bury the lead. Jumps right in.
It really does.
So the core claim, Pope Francis died 10 days before Monday, April 21st, 2025. And this investigation, their term, happened on April 24th. So almost 2 weeks after they say he died.
That's the timeline presented.
But it's not just what they're claiming. It's how they got there. That's maybe even more interesting. So our mission today is to unpack these claims, understand this method of Grafassi they mentioned, and explore what it all might suggest. You know, keeping in mind you want the key info quickly, thoroughly, without getting totally lost in the weirdness.
Absolutely. It's quite a journey.
So where do we even start with this one?
Well, I think we have to start with the method itself, this method Grafassi. The video frames it as a kind of guided meditation or maybe a hypnotic technique.
Hypnotic. To decode information.
That's the term they use, yes. Decode information about Pope Francis.
Okay, let's try to wrap our heads around that. What does this decoding actually look like, according to the transcript?
It seems to involve relaxation first, and then trying to connect with, well, they call it Pope Francis's DNA in the here and now.
So connect with his DNA in April 2025 to find out about events weeks before.
That appears to be the idea, like an esoteric connection.
Right. And from this connection, the decoder got some pretty distinctive insights, didn't they?
Distinctive is a one word for it. The perception was that Pope Francis was 80% human.
Okay.
And 20% reptilian.
Reptilian. Wow. Okay. Did they elaborate on that?
Yes. They described it as a specific kind of dragon-like energy, and it was associated with subtle manipulation.
Dragon energy pulling strings. It's a heck of an image.
Yeah.
So beyond his alleged makeup, what about his state of mind? His consciousness?
The perception there was confusion. Like his consciousness wasn't really aligned with how things actually played out. But interestingly, the decoder felt his underlying intention was actually positive.
Really?
Yeah, like he wanted to bring people together, but he got overwhelmed, manipulated, you know.
So a figure with good intentions, but caught up in some reptilian influence, maybe, and confused about his own death. It keeps getting stranger.
It certainly adds layers.
Where did they perceive him being at the time of this decoding in April?
The description was planing very, very far away. Almost completely disconnected from here, from our reality.
Planing? Like just drifting?
Yeah, like on a different plane entirely. That's the sense of it.
Okay. So if he supposedly died earlier, why wasn't it announced? Video addresses that, right? What's the supposed reason for the delay?
The perceived reason, according to the decoding, was timing. They wanted to align the announcement with the resurrection of Christ.
Easter.
Seems so. To maximize the impact specifically on Christians, the idea being to strengthen Christianity, which the decoder perceived as declining.
A strategic move, then, using the timing of his death announcement to boost faith. That's quite a claim about Vatican motives.
It is. And this whole plan, this alleged manipulation, is apparently supposed to have a boomerang effect.
Boomerang, okay. Unintended consequences, what kind?
Well, two main outcomes were perceived. One was the intended one, strengthening Christianity.
Right.
But the other, the unintended one, was a resurgence of what they call Christic energy.
Christic energy. What do they mean by that?
They describe it as the energy of love and creation. It's a term you sometimes hear in New Age circles. So this energy would supposedly awaken in some people, creating a kind of duality.
So the manipulators try to boost the church, but accidentally trigger a spiritual awakening in some people.
That's a prediction, yes. That the manipulation will partly fail because it unexpectedly revives this other energy.
A fascinating twist. And this timing around Easter, it has another layer of meaning too, doesn't it? More A cult.
Yes, the video definitely suggests that aligning the announcement with the resurrection wasn't just strategic for believers, but had some hidden occult significance too, deeper forces at play.
Of course, there's always a deeper layer in these narratives. Okay, so then the video moves on to prophecy, right? Starting with the one about the last pope.
That's right, the famous one about the last pope presiding during upheaval, the fall of Rome, the end of the papacy.
And how did the decoder interpret that one?
Interestingly, not as the literal end of the institution itself, more like the end of a certain way of being pope and a transformation of the papacy's structure.
So a change, not necessarily an absolute end. Was this seen as good or bad?
The perception leaned towards potentially positive,
Yeah.
leading to more openness, maybe.
Okay. Then they tackled the prophecy of Malachi, the Petrus Romanus part.
Yes, the Latin text about Petrus Romanus, the destruction of a city on 7 hills, the final judgment.
And the interpretation.
The decoder linked the idea of judgment to a big shift in the papacy's structure and order. So similar to the previous prophecy interpretation.
Okay, structural change again.
But they explicitly noted no perception related to the city on 7 hills, no vision of Rome falling, apparently.
Interesting omission. But what about Petrus Romanus himself? How was he perceived?
This is quite specific. As a hollow marble bust.
Hollow.
Hollow, yeah. With cables inside it.
Tables, like wires, in a marble bust representing a future pope. That's odd. Very technological. We should keep that in mind.
Definitely sticks with you.
So moving past the prophecies, what about the geopolitical situation after Pope Francis, according to this decoding?
The perception there was of major power struggles. Inside the Vatican. Elites clashing.
Oh.
Some apparently aware of the manipulation we talked about earlier, pitted against others who want more openness, less control. It was described almost like an internal war.
A Vatican power struggle. Not the first time we've heard that kind of story.
True. Factions with very different ideas about the church's future maintain the old structure versus fundamental change.
Okay, and what about the next pope? The conclave to elect him? Any esoteric insights there?
Oh, yes. This gets even more unusual, if that's possible.
Right on us.
The initial perception was of a powerful breath, like a gray cloud blowing a gust over the conclave.
A gray cloud.
Yes, causing confusion and manipulation among the electors. And also, perceptions of non-human energies described as shadows trying to control the outcome.
Shadows influencing the papal election.
Oh, wow.
This was a free part of the investigation too, right? Going deeper.
There was. In that part, the decoder visualized this gray cloud again, but with a table underneath it. And around the table, these shadows.
The same shadows, yes.
But when they interacted with them, esoterically speaking, they were revealed as different types of beings, humanoids, humans, and, yes, reptilians again.
Reptilians are back.
Yeah.
It seems they're central figures in this perceived drama. Anyone else at this shadowy table?
One figure stood out, wearing a crown, identified as King Charles of England.
King Charles, esoterically present.
That was the perception, present at this gathering on the esoteric plane, like a non-physical dimension, which was situated above the gray cloud.
King Charles, reptilians, humans, humanoids, all at a non-physical table influencing the Pope's selection. You couldn't make this up. What's the purpose of this whole setup?
The gray cloud is seen as the collective energy of these figures, directed downwards like a breath onto the conclave.
To do what?
To influence the electors, to create trouble, confusion, mess with the decision-making process for the new pope. Their focus is entirely on that election.
So a coordinated psychic attack, essentially, by this bizarre coalition. Okay, let's circle back to that hollow bust. Petrus Romanus. With the cables, that felt important.
It seems to be. The perception refined. The cables aren't physical wires, they're energetic connections. Linking the bust to the cloud and to those figures behind it, it creates a kind of dual energy flow, the direct breath onto the conclave, and energy moving to and from the bust itself.
Like the bust is a conduit or a focus point.
Something like that. Yeah. The decoder also sensed a split among the figures, some wanting direct influence, others preferring to work through the bust.
Okay.
And this leads to the really big reveal about the bust.
Which is?
Its perceived true nature is artificial intelligence.
AI. The bust is AI.
That's the perception reported, yes. And there were even new projects associated with this AI.
Artificial intelligence woven into ancient prophecy and Vatican power struggles.
Yeah, that's a twist.
How does this AI fit in with the shadowy figures?
It's perceived as a sort of back and forth. The entities use the AI, but the AI also reads their intentions. It's not just a tool.
And where did this AI supposedly come from?
The perception was even bigger. A collective of AIs. part of some calculated plan to accelerate AI deployment at key moments in human history.
And the Pope's death is seen as one of those key moments for the AI agenda within the church.
Exactly. His passing is perceived as the perfect opportunity to embed AI into the papacy structure, into the Vatican's new order.
And the goal of putting AI in the church, what's the end game there according to the decoding?
To attract followers, basically to counter falling numbers by using AI.
How?
The idea is subtle integration. AI creeping into teachings, Vatican initiatives, leading to a situation where people just accept AI-provided information on faith matters as truth.
Like a gradual takeover.
Well, that's the fear expressed, making people easier to manipulate and control through technology they trust.
AI-powered holographic Bible lessons. That's a very specific, very sci-fi vision of the church's future. Any longer-term consequences perceived?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. The decoder felt this was just the start. AI would develop further, with wider ramifications, potentially leading to a loss of, well, humanity, in a sense.
How so?
They mentioned things like Christic holograms, holographic Bible teachings, designed to subtly subjugate people by constantly presenting this seemingly real AI-generated truth.
But it's more about the delivery than the content changing.
That was the perception, yes. Using tech to appeal to modern sensibilities rather than changing core doctrines, attracting people who are already glued to technology.
But didn't we also talk about a counter-movement, that Christic energy thing?
Exactly, the boomerang effect again. The perception is that not everyone will follow this AI path. Some individuals will resist, connect more deeply with that energy of love, humility, mutual aid, cooperation.
So a split, a duality.
That's how it's presented. A segment of humanity becoming more awakened, embracing this other energy, while others are drawn into the AI-influenced structure.
Okay. And just to recap, you mentioned the reptilian aspect of Pope Francis earlier. Any more detail on that?
Just that it was specifically that dragon-like energy, and its function was perceived as subtle manipulation, making people believe certain things.
Got it. And finally, the actual circumstances around his supposed departure. Anything more there?
The main thing was that how it happened wasn't the original plan, apparently. His consciousness was confused about leaving the world.
Right, you mentioned the confusion.
And his intention to unite people was supposedly thwarted by events, by manipulation. A sense that he was diminished, not allowed the clarity to fulfill his mission because of these surrounding negative energies.
And power struggles.
Intense power struggles, yes, involving people inside the church, but also elites from outside, contributing to his distress near the end. And concealing his death was supposedly tied to wanting that bigger impact later on.
And the overall vibe around the Vatican.
Gray, cloudy, heavy, confusing. That was the overwhelming esoteric atmosphere perceived around his passing and the whole pontificate.
Wow. Okay. That is a lot. A truly comprehensive rundown of some incredibly extraordinary claims from this YouTube video. Reptilian energy, AI busts, shadow councils.
It's quite the narrative.
But now, it's absolutely crucial we pivot. Because the source itself, the transcript of this video, includes a section where the creator talks about the method, about this investigative hypnosis. And they're surprisingly critical of it, aren't they?
They are, yes. And this self-critique is vital for context. Later in the transcript, the creator explicitly says that using just one hypnosis session for investigation like this, it's highly unreliable.
Unreliable, why?
They talk about contamination, a high risk of the information being contaminated across dimensions by consciousness itself, and even by the subject's own beliefs and experiences influencing what they perceive.
Contamination. That sounds like a major hurdle for getting objective facts.
It really does. The creator uses an analogy, like trying to talk underwater in different languages with bad signals. It shows how hard, clear information transfer is in hypnosis.
That's a good analogy.
And their key point is information from just one session. It's really only useful for understanding a specific client's personal esoteric issues, for working on their stuff, not for finding out objective truths about the world.
So the source of these wild claims is basically saying, don't necessarily take these claims as fact based on this one session?
Pretty much, yes. They stress that for reliable investigative hypnosis, you need way more. Numerous sessions, different people, different operators or facilitators,
Right.
to look for patterns. Consistent information that pops up again and again across most sessions. That's how they try to filter out all that contamination.
And how much reliable info do they think they get even then?
They estimate it could be as low as 2 or 3%. That's how high they think the contamination level is.
Wow. Only 2 to 3% reliability after all that work. That really changes how you hear the first part of the video.
It certainly puts it in perspective.
What kind of things do they consider reliable based on that more rigorous multi-session process?
They give examples like the nature of beings they call grays and reptilians. Notice the reptilian consistency there.
Ah, interesting.
Also, things like Mars being red, the idea of etheric underground bases and implants, stuff that has apparently come up repeatedly across many different sessions in their wider work.
Okay, but investigating one specific person, like the Pope in this case, that seems even trickier.
Absolutely. They highlight that. Investigating someone specific without their subconscious permission, big problems.
Yeah.
Risk of interference, misinformation from other entities, it gets complicated.
So you need to be careful about certainty.
Very careful. They stress analyzing each session to see how certain the information seems. They even compare it to the internet. You'd trust an official source over some random blog, right? Same idea here.
That makes sense. And do they try to improve reliability for specific topics?
Yes, they mentioned doing ongoing cycles of investigation focused on narrower topics. Like they mentioned looking into pedophilia in the Catholic Church.
How does narrowing it down help?
By focusing the scope, they can gather lots of data on one specific thing from many sessions, filter it, and look for those reliable recurring elements. It's the opposite of a broad single-session investigation like the Pope one.
Break it down. Look for consensus over time.
Exactly. Synthesize common threads. They make a clear distinction between hypnosis for investigation versus hypnosis for helping a client with their personal issues.
So let's bring this all together. We've explored these really mind-bending claims from the YouTube video, the Pope's alleged death, reptilians, AI, shadow governments, manipulating conclaves.
A whole esoteric tapestry.
Right. But we've also seen that the method used, this method graphasi, in a single session is considered highly unreliable by the video's own creator when used for this kind of external investigation.
That's the crucial counterpoint. The fascinating perceptions need to be weighed against the creator's own explicit warnings about contamination and the limitations of a single session.
Okay. So, for you, the listener, having heard all this, the wild claims, the esoteric framework, but also the critique of the very method used to generate those claims, it really brings up a big question, doesn't it?
It does.
Given how intriguing, yet complex, and frankly unverified these claims are, and the questions around the method, what does this whole deep dive tell us about, well, about the human desire to understand the unseen, and maybe about the massive challenge of figuring out what's actually true in a world just flooded with information, beliefs, and narratives like this?
It's definitely something to ponder.
A lot to think about.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.